enough for making something that awesome.
Yeah, and I'll go further and say that you thought of Lord of the Rings, I thought of Final Fantasy. I remember the first time seeing the Final Fantasy videos, the animation at the beginning of the game, where each of the individual hairs were moving on the head of somebody when they
Hmm.
were doing that animation. And when you look at what Blender has done in this release, they are focusing on the things that the industry is focused on. And this
Yep.
is a really important example for Linux because a lot of times, I'm just going to be honest here and get a lot of hate mail for it, but Linux doesn't follow where the trends where things are going. They're kind of just like, well, we going to stick with the desktop and the way we've known the desktop for 30 years, and that's where we're going while everybody else is looking at integration. Blender is a perfect example of an open source project where they look at what's going on in the industry and they're adapting to those changes so that they can stay up to date and stay in the top place because they treat it like it's a competition because we should be treating it like a competition. And I'll give you one of the examples in here specifically is the fact of ray tracing and the work they're doing with Intel in that. NVIDIA spent half of their conference this week talking about ray tracing. Blender's already integrating ray tracing deeply within there across multiple architectures to make sure that's a part and
Mhm.
available so that they're not sitting there 4 years later as the whole industry goes to ray tracing going, oh, yeah, we should add that feature in, which frankly is how a lot of open source projects seem to run.
You know, the other thing you see, and you saw this with the latest